we want to use this tool that we have to answer the hard questions.
Quote, I have a question and perhaps Matthew's Hope can answer. I don't mean this to be rude, but how does a homeless person have a cell phone and an ATM card? Second person I've seen in 2 weeks homeless, but has money and a cell phone. They weren't living in a car and didn't have a job. This guy was definitely homeless. Is this something the government is giving to them?
I'm asking the same question. What the hell are you doing with an iPhone 13? Okay.
You know, the reality is, just because you're homeless doesn't mean you don't have money.
So how can you be sure that a person is homeless in here?
Wait a minute. Obviously, all you have to do is look at him. It says right here, the guy was definitely homeless. What the hell does that mean? He was definitely homeless. Sorry. What does that look like? So tell me.
Sometimes I go in my store and I may or may not look homeless.
People wear their pajamas to Walmart now, for God's sakes.
Yes.
Who the hell's homeless? The 85-year-old woman on a walker that walked in here 2 weeks ago was first-time homeless. Don't know any homeless people that are wearing a shirt that says, I am homeless.
Which this is good that we're going through this, that people are asking questions. Hello everyone, I'm Tracy Lewis with We Are Winter Gardening, and I'm here with my friends Esther Scott, who is the founder and CEO of Matthew's Hope, and Shelley Bradford, who is the executive director and president of Matthew's Hope. Welcome to episode 46 of Straight Talk, No BS with Matthew's Hope, where today we're going to be responding to a question that was asked on one of our Facebook pages, and it received a lot of attention and even a little bit of backlash.
A little bit.
Just a little bit. But that's okay because that's why we're here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's the question, which was posted anonymously in my Winter Garden community Facebook group, which now has over 52,000 members. Quote, I have a question and perhaps Matthew's Hope can answer. I don't mean this to be rude, but how does a homeless person have a cell phone and an ATM card? Second person I've seen in 2 weeks homeless, but has money and a cell phone. They weren't living in a car and didn't have a job. This guy was definitely homeless. Is this something the government is giving to them? Before you guys react, I want to note that a number of people, they left a lot of comments and very critical of this person asking a question, even though they said they weren't trying to be rude, but I'm sure that not only them were thinking this question often when they see somebody who has a cell phone, or all of these questions that we're going to unpack. Why is it important for people to ask these types of questions?
Before you go there, Tracy, first, I want to thank this person. I don't know who they are because they're an anonymous member. And personally, I think if you really have something to say, you shouldn't be anonymous. That's the first thing. So that's not a shot at whoever this was. But my feelings are, if I have something to say, I want my name behind it. I feel so strongly and believe in it so strongly that I just tell people spell my last name right, Billue, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, but all that aside, I do want to thank this person because people need to, we've gotten away from how I grew up. You used to be able to talk about politics. Yeah. And things like that. And
people don't ask.
Well, you didn't lose friends and family anymore. Over it. You just sat there.
That's why they're posting anonymous, because they're afraid that people are going to do what they did.
In fairness to this individual, not knowing them, that is true. It could, sometimes it's like that because people like to, I call it crap on your porch and run. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I'm going to make John leave that in here. Because that's what it is sometimes, is they sit there and they want to drop the bomb and then they want to stir the pot and then run. They don't want to be a part of it.
So you're encouraging these questions, correct?
I want to, yes. And if understand, people can even, if they want to, if you're not comfortable with posting it, you can reach out to me personally, Scott.Ballue at gmail.com.
How do you spell your last name?
Billue. Billue at gmail.com. And we want to use this tool that we have to answer the hard questions. You don't have to agree with us. We're not trying to get people to agree with us. We want to know what you think. We want to know the hard questions. We want to know what concerns you. We want to know what you might have an idea how we fix all this that we hadn't thought about. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the first off is keep the questions coming, ask the hard questions. All I ask is there's no need to take a personal shot at me or one of my staff or Matthew's Hope as a whole when you're just talking out of your backside. Come with a legitimate question and what have you, and let's see if we can't address it. And the right answer sometimes might be, as a pastor, I've said this for years, your pastor has all the answers. bow to him because it's probably Jesus. I don't have all the answers. I will tell people I don't have all the answers, but I will also tell you this: if we don't have the answer, we're going to do everything in our power to find out what that answer is. Yeah.
So let's unpack this question. Well, there was a couple questions. So the first one, how is it possible for a homeless person to have a cell phone?
Well,
because I'm going to be honest, I'm with this member, and to me, okay, if you're homeless, you don't have no money. So obviously you shouldn't have a phone because it's expensive to have a phone. So
it's fair.
I mean, obviously my perspective has changed since being the host here and becoming your friend and asking the hard questions.
Yeah.
But for those of us who haven't sat with you and talked about this, how does a homeless person have a cell phone?
Many times they do go through the government, and they do get phones. And since I've started with Matthew's Hope, the phones have gotten better. The phones are such a need. We don't have, as Scott said earlier, we don't have pay phones anymore, and people have to be able to keep in connection with the world, with their families, with their jobs, and things like that. It's just so important. Most of the time, they're limited in minutes they can talk. Like, remember way back when we were limited to we could have unlimited minutes after 9, but until then you had to pay for so many minutes. That's still the same for the government phones.
Now keep in mind too, a lot of those programs have stopped though recently.
They have.
And
they've not made it easy to get.
We used to call them Obama phones.
Yeah.
They have, most of that has stopped in just this year. So a lot of those people are on the tail end of that program. So they won't get it next time around. And it was designed exactly for what Shelley said it was. It's really emergencies, job, call the probation officer, keep in touch with family, call for emergencies, that type of thing.
Gotcha. So how is it possible for a homeless person to have an ATM card?
Well, let's go back to the phone for a second if we can. Okay. Yep. This is a personal issue for me with people. I'm asking the same question. What the hell are you doing with an iPhone 13? Okay. Right?
Yeah.
Now, here's what happens, though. Joe Bleeding Heart finds a homeless and they buy it for him. Okay. I can't tell you how often someone has bought an expensive phone for somebody. I look, and my feelings are, you need it for what you need it for. The stuff that Shelley talked about. Now, the other side, think about this. I have 24 hours in a day. What do I do with it? A lot of these people, besides applying for jobs, besides taking online classes, besides keeping in touch with family, what have you, a lot of them, that's their only form of entertainment.
Or their companion.
Or their companion. And what I will tell you, that homeless people are one of the biggest readers you'll ever meet. And I mean, seriously, many of them are very intellectual. Most of them have an education deeper than my own. And books have a tendency to get destroyed. And so you're using, I'm dyslexic, so I don't read a whole lot. But they now have, what are the pads called? The little things that where you can bring a book up on the pad.
Like a Kindle.
A Kindle, things like that. Okay, they can go to their cell phones, as I understand it, or some of them shown me, and they're reading books and taking classes on that phone. So there's a whole lot more about that phone than people think about. I'm going to tie this into something that's similar, where someone says, I watch these people drive up in a Range Rover. And I have to admit, I've been through this a number of years ago, even after being homeless, when I started Matthew's Hope. And a woman, I was sitting at a coffee shop in Winter Garden, and this woman, I'm just overhearing a conversation where she's unable to feed her family and stuff, right? And me and my friend Sarah, who was actually around when I first established Matthew's Hope, said, you know what, we're just going to take it upon ourselves. God kind of moved on our heart to feed this family. So we asked this woman to meet us back here a couple of hours later, okay? Not paying attention. We leave, right? And we come back with enough groceries to feed their family for probably a week. And she says, well, my car's right over here. And it's a dark green, hunter green Range Rover, one of my dream cars, hunter green Range Rover with the saddle leather. I mean, you open the door and some of us men type go, oh. not just leather,
Right.
saddle leather. Okay. It was beautiful.
Bells and whistles.
It's all she had left. And then I heard someone say, I'm listening to people in the coffee shop and they go, why did she sell the damn car? She could probably feed those kids for several months.
Where is she going to stay?
Well, first off, that's her home.
Yeah.
Okay. Number two, the minute you drive a car off a lot, you are already upside down.
Mm.
Most of us, unless we have a low mileage car, like right now, because I don't drive my Sportage, it's 4 years old. I've only got 50,000 miles on it. That is unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
It actually is worth more than what my payoff is. But the reality of it is that person couldn't even sell that car if they wanted to because the bank requires their payoff.
Right.
And so it's all they have. So as hard as it is to swallow to see someone with an iPhone or a Range Rover,
But an
there's
iPhone costs less than a house.
well, it costs less than a house, and it's often the lifeline. If they have children, trust me. Again,
They're going to school. The school needs to contact you.
School needs contact. Homework needs to be done. I mean, there are so many things that we can go through. And again, you all are both mothers, and I it's not like I was an absent father, but the truth is, I don't think I was nearly in tune with my children's needs for school.
Mm-hmm.
I was just told something. Hey, go get the kids need this. I went and got it.
Mm-hmm.
I was the hunter.
Yeah.
But you know that there's a lot there.
Right.
Okay. And I'm not talking about trying to occupy your kids at a restaurant
Right.
somewhere, as we so often see, and my kids would never be allowed to do that. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about an absolute need.
Right. So the next part of the question is, how does a homeless person have an ATM card?
You know, the reality is, just because you're homeless doesn't mean you don't have money. It also doesn't mean you don't have a job that provides a card that looks like an ATM card, and that's how they get their money, so they don't have physical money for people to steal from them. It could be an EBT card. It could be money from a pension that they may have had. We have guys that get pensions every month. The pensions just are not enough to pay for a place to live. And I think that is for me, that's a hard pill to swallow, because I think of those people as my parents.
Yeah.
And or my brother or my sister or something like that, because it's heartbreaking to see how they worked so hard their whole lives, and now they don't have a place to stay. So that little bit of money they might have, that's how they protect it as best as possible, because it's so much easier to steal cash.
And if they get any kind of social services, the bulk of social services now are done through a card. They don't get checks in the mail.
Right.
Okay, the card is reloaded once a month. So let's say they have some type of disability. They don't actually get a disability check, as people think about it.
Right.
They get their card reloaded. So often that's what you're either seeing. If it's in a store, chances are it's an EBT card. It's a food stamp card. You know, when I grew up, we were poor, and before being homeless, we had food stamps, but you used to pull them out. They looked like Monopoly money. And I can remember just being mortified as a kid as we'd stand at the register.
Everybody knew.
And we pull out one, the Monopoly money, so to speak, and everybody kind of knew, oh, they're poor.
Right.
Now, it actually had a good effect on me because I realized I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to stay there. But the whole idea behind is to give some more dignity to it, whether you agree to that or not. It really was a dignity thing. It was also an ease of services. Look, we've even had one of our biggest donors donates off a card to us. And unfortunately, we have to pay the fees on that. So that's the downside. There's a downside to all this. So the assumption that it's an ATM card, there's probably a lot more to it. And if it is an ATM card, chances are it's because that's where their disability is being put into, or whatever, or their
they
pensions.
have a job. So how many I don't know if you'll know this, but for your guests, how many do you think have some type of job, whether it be full-time or part-time?
That is above board?
Yeah.
Because a lot of our folks, because of their appearance, because of their situation, they're working under the table. I would say the bulk of our folks are working at some level.
Okay.
But they're typically working under the table because they don't have two nickels to rub together to begin with. Okay. And possibly they owe on back taxes. There's all kinds of things. I'll give you an example. We had, his name was Happy. Happy was like 6'5", 350. And I used to, when I'd scold him, he'd cry. And people go, how do you he was a Mexican gangbanger at one time. I mean, this guy was pretty rough looking. But he has the sweetest soul. And I'm here to say he's doing beautifully in Texas now.
Okay.
His life is together. But Happy would, we helped him get a job. Often what will happen is not as much lately, but we would have people would call us and say, hey, Scott, who do you have that can pass a background check? They may have been in prison or something, but we know what they did.
Sure.
That can pass a drug test and has a strong work ethic. I mean, which is kind of what our shop and all the other things we do has to do with earning points. And so I got Happy a job with a friend of mine, and he was wonderful. And in fact, I'll tell you, they're still in Winter Garden. It's called Pammy Sammy's. Okay. And this was her old location years ago. Happy went to work with them, and within 10 days is all it took for the government to swoop in and to take that money.
Mom.
Wow.
Okay. And when they, what's the proper word for
10 days isn't enough time to get back on your feet.
Garnishment.
Okay. It took, the garnishment letter went to the employer, so they have to comply. And then what ended up happening, that garnishment is typically the bulk of what it is. And Happy, it pretty much broke him, because he could not pay off what he needed to pay off. He wanted to take responsibility for his debt, but he also was trying to live a better life so he could shower and be presentable to go to work. And when it was all said and done, he ended up without the job and had to go find something else. I think it was in construction, and they let him work under the table loading bricks. But people need to realize that a lot of times when people are working under the table, they are not trying to circumvent law. What they're trying to do is trying to figure out how to make two nickels into a dime.
So how can you be sure that a person is homeless? In here,
Wait a minute. Obviously, all you have to do is look at him. It says right here, the guy was definitely homeless. I'm trying to figure out, without taking a shot at this person.
That's my question. How?
What the hell does that mean? He was definitely homeless. Sorry. What does that look like?
Right.
So tell me.
Sometimes I go in my store and I may or may not look homeless.
People wear their pajamas to Walmart now, for God's sakes.
Yes.
Who the hell's homeless?
But is like...
Let me tell you.
Let's talk about that.
Okay. So first off, to suggest for a moment anymore, it used to be easy. The way we first identified homeless people,
Backpacks.
bicycle and backpack. That was our first. And we had a 1 in 100 chance that the person that we pulled alongside of was not homeless, but had lost their license to DUI and had a right backpack. When we opened up Brevard, everyone in Brevard has a backpack and a bicycle down by the beach. So people are telling us all the time, well, I'm not homeless. Why?
Oh, wow.
And then when we tell them, they start laughing. And I go, yeah, I guess that's okay. Everybody looks like a beach bum, right? So that makes it a little bit harder to roll up on somebody and say, hey, look, you look like you're hungry, or can we do something for you? The truth is, the 85-year-old woman on a walker that walked in here 2 weeks ago was first-time homeless. The truth is, if you were to walk into our outreach centers and you looked around the room, you don't see a lot of lazy kids, lazy young people not working. What you mostly see is people over the age of 60 that are just trying to figure out how to get through the day. So our fastest growing populations, and I've shared this in other podcasts, seniors, many, going back to this ATM card question, many that have pensions. The bulk have pensions, but that pension was not designed for this economy. And a lot of times if they lost a spouse, they lost a portion of the pension, if not all of it, and they've lost a portion of their Social Security. So that house they've lived in for 30 or 40 years, suddenly they're living in the car. What normally happens is their health starts to fail quickly because they're no longer getting proper rest, and they're not laying down, they're sitting up, their legs are swollen, they may have diabetes, the list goes on. Second is people with physical and mental disabilities. And I've used this example before, but we're going to bring it together again for those that don't know it. Shelley has two sons, that one born with Down syndrome, one with Asperger's, and then on top of everything else, she inherited her brother who's in how old?
He's 48.
Jacob's 48. And when her parents passed, she became the parent, the caregiver for Jacob. Now, what often happens is the parent passed, there is nobody,
No.
and that person ends up on the streets. And often, unfortunately, disabilities outside of Downs,
Sure.
disabilities often duplicate the look of someone who is high and on drugs or drunk, and they're not. And I've watched people get arrested over and over again. What's her name? The redhead in Winter Garden. You know what I'm talking about? She has a terminal disease that her mother and sister have both died from. It makes her a bit looking like she has cerebral palsy. Okay, and
Her whole body
twitches all the time, 24/7. Twitches
All the time.
24/7. When we opened up for the shelter for the storm last time, her body twitched the whole night. And when I got to talk to her the next day, I was talking to her, and she says, "I am so exhausted." Well, I would be too if my
Right.
body was in
If you're
constant motion.
Yeah.
And not to get too far off the subject, but that's the homeless person. So when we say he definitely was homeless, I'm not sure what that knows, because I don't know any homeless people that are wearing a shirt that says "I am homeless."
Right.
Okay. Is that the government, something government given? We'll go back to that again on all those things. And the reality of it is what the government gives is not that much to individuals. And what is given to organizations is often poorly spent, because our focus is on chronic homelessness, which to me is to hide the homeless rather than help the homeless, rather than what I call low-hanging fruit,
Yep.
which we're always looking for, which is that single mom that's been out there for 5 months. I can get her off the streets like this. It's not that we don't serve the guy who's been out there for 5 years, but that's going to take more time and resources. So, I think when people say that, I take a little personal offense to it, and sorry, anonymous member, because when I speak at schools, sometimes I do a slideshow, and my picture is in that, and then I ask the kids who the homeless people are.
Yeah.
And often, and we've talked about this before, but it's a great place to make this point again, is often they can't understand when they hear it was me, and I point out who in those pictures was not homeless. They may not have been well kept, and they may not have the nicest clothes. They weren't homeless. In fact, some of them had money. They just didn't wear it. Okay. But then I asked the children. These are children typically, most often in the 6 to 8 year old range. And you said, well, tell me what a homeless person, tell me about homeless people. And they'll all, how they all get. I mean, my God, they're racing.
They want to show
their
their
hands.
answer.
Okay? They want to answer. They want to be part of it. They're bums. They don't have jobs. They're drug addicts. They name all these things off. And I sit there, every time I do it, I think to myself, how does a child that age decides what a homeless person looks like?
They've heard it.
It's because it's a
They've
learned
heard it.
behavior. They heard it from their parents, and their parents were ignorant, not stupid. Look it up. Those are two different words. Ignorant to the truth. But unfortunately, the truth became fact. Kind of like politics now.
Yeah.
Okay?
Which this is good that we're going through this, that people are asking questions. So how can more people ask more questions so we can unpack these and maybe help them see a different perspective or really the truth?
I mean, definitely keep these questions coming and own what you're asking. I teach my kids all the time, say what you mean, mean what you say, put your name by it. And it's not because we want to come out there and attack you.
Of course.
We want to be able to address you and just say, hey, Susie, or whatever name we want to use, this is the reality. And we may see it differently than you do, and that's okay. And that's okay. Go to our Facebook page, post a question, go to Instagram,
Or a DM or
send us
email.
messages, send us emails. You're always welcome to do that. For sure.
Look, I just got back from a long trip, traveling a long way, so see a lot of different people. We still live in the greatest country ever. We're the only ones killing it. We're our worst enemies. But instead of getting caught up in whose fault something is, we need to start sitting down at the table and agree to disagree, and then figure out how we can move it forward.
Definitely.
We attended a hobnob, a couple of them recently, and one of the things I noticed in the room, it was so divided. It was so divided that the chambers actually had to make an announcement to ask people to be kind and considerate and polite to one another. And these were adults in the room. And that's a sad statement. I don't know about anybody else, but that's not the United States I grew up in. And I fear for that. Even the friends that I visited with in Europe, everybody wanted to know what the hell is going on in your country.
Yeah.
It was interesting, but they were concerned even asking me because they've gotten so much blowback depending on what people were. They were Trumpster, whether they were a Biden, whatever the case was, and now Harris, So, but we've got to change that. And
So
these
let's come together.
These kind of posts, don't take it personally when I say these things to you. Sometimes it's what you say. Listen, I got a Jersey girl in my life. Sometimes I just go say it's not what you said. It's how you said it, babe.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Don't go on the attack. I've gone so far that we have invited, and I invite anybody who wants to come on our podcast, even if they disagree with us. If you've got, it's kind of like when I told my children years ago, I'm not going to tell you what to believe. I want you just simply to understand why you believe it and be able to articulate it. And though we may disagree, I will always respect you.
Absolutely.
And that's the same type of thing here. You want to disagree. You want to say, hey, come on. I do the bulk of the social media. If you want to come on and say, Scott, I disagree. Or, if you don't see me personally, you might want to say Matthew Scopes because it might not be me. There's other people, but I do the bulk of it. I disagree. And here's why. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. But the thing is, if we agree to disagree, but both agree that there's a problem.
Definitely. Everyone
I've talked to in 17 municipalities we serve, everyone agrees there's a problem. But as I told one of the senators this past week, is not one of the 17 municipalities is rowing in the same direction. Each police department is acting differently. Each mayor, each city manager, each council, they're all acting differently. And at some point, if you're going to hit the target, everybody has to agree what weapon to use and who's going to aim it.
Right.
Okay. Or otherwise, all you're doing is tearing things apart.
Creating chaos, more chaos.
Yeah, more
I really feel like that's the direction we're going in for sure.
Oh, I think we've been in chaos for probably the last 10 years.
Sure.
Maybe longer.
Sure. But this new bill
steam.
Is making it worse because nobody knows what to do. And everybody that I can tell seems to be trying to tackle it on their own.
Yeah. And I'm sure we'll be talking about that in future podcasts because we've had a lot of conversations with those that want to be in office and those that are in office. And I look forward to those conversations. I encourage you all to join us and keep an eye on our Facebook page and what have you. And our media team is amazing. If you don't know Imagine Media, they are top notch. I mean, Mark, John, Tracy, and the rest of the team, Michelle, which is batshit crazy. They all do a really good job of listening and trying to put out there to the best of their knowledge and our knowledge what the truth is and allow you to make a decision what that looks like. But I can assure you there's no agendas. There's no one being Imagine and We Are Winter Garden are not paid to agree with us. That's not how this works. They are paid to help us produce this podcast. And it so happens that every once in a while, in Tracy's case, the light went on.
Yep. Because at first, Scott and me were like this. I'm like, what? No, they can come into my home. It's fine.
That's long before this podcast. That's been many years ago. And it's why I consider Tracy a dear friend now is rather than just disagreeing with me, we started to have a conversation and we realized that we were a lot closer to what we both believed than what we disagreed on. And then once we sat down and talked about, well, okay, so what is the right way? Okay. And that's a conversation.
And by working together, I feel like we've been able to go miles further than you trying to do something, me trying to make something up and do something. So I appreciate you. And I appreciate you too, Shelley. Scott, it was great that you mentioned that the politicians and you went to the Hobnob. We actually did interview a few politicians, so I'm excited to share that in our next episode. Members, community, please don't be afraid to ask the questions because we are here to either offer you the answer or really just helping you to learn the facts because what we see may not be really the truth.
And if you choose to remain anonymous, we will honor that.
We will. Thank you guys for listening. Please share this with others because they are probably asking the same question of why does this person have a cell phone? So please share it and like, subscribe, and ask the questions. We'll see you next time.